This episode of The Movie Men is brought to you by media sales consultant Tim DeArmond.
Your source for daily traditional and digital marketing insights and advice.
For more information, check out the link posted in the show notes below. Well, hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. You know, I had a thought.
Cool.
Over the last however many episodes, like we never really came up with. You hear all the great podcasts,
Right.
and they have this wonderful, iconic intro,
Ooh.
right?
Yeah.
And ours is just always kind of like, "Hey, how's it going? Welcome," right? And then you say, "Welcome, welcome, welcome," and it's like, and it works, but it's just not. You know, I kind of wanted to close your eyes for a second.
Okay. They've been closed the whole time, actually.
Perfect. Take yourself back to like the 1920s or the 1930s, if you can remember back that far.
I will, yeah.
Okay, are you there?
Okay, now I am.
Back to your childhood.
Yes.
Okay. There were those like radio dramas that would have an announcer,
Sure.
and the guy would always be like, "Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Movie Men."
Right.
And it was kind of this really like, you know, over the top, super dramatic,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
That's your job from now on. You're that guy. So moving forward,
Okay.
you need to, you start every episode with this over the top kind of crazy thing.
All right. Okay. I think I'm there.
All right. I love how agreeable you are. Let's give it a shot. Let's hear your best.
Will Brady. I sound okay. I'll keep going. I think I sound more like a ghost than an old 30s radio announcer.
It does sound kind of like a woo. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here. Probably more glad to have you here than you are to be here, but that's fine.
Hey,
that's
the way it is sometimes.
That's the way that it is. That was really the relationship that I had with my mom when I was in my early 20s and hadn't left home yet. I was super happy to be there.
Right.
And I don't know how happy she was that I was still there. But we have a good relationship now that I've moved out.
Nice.
Folks, this week we are not reviewing a film.
No.
Next week we'll be back to our film reviewing madness.
Yep.
But this week we're doing something a little bit unique.
Yeah.
We've had guests on the show before. In some cases, we've had repeat guests.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
But it's always just been a friend of ours who wants to review a movie with us.
Right.
And don't really hold any kind of, like we'll have someone come on and review Frozen with us, but they're not they don't hold any kind of Frozen
Right.
Extra knowledge, right? It's just
Right.
fun. It's fun to have different people on the show. Well, to hell with that. This week, we have brought in the big guns, and we're going to discuss sort of a fun topic. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the context.
Okay.
And it depends on your definition of fun.
Right.
And it
True.
depends on... Actually, yeah, I'll just stop talking.
No, man. Don't ever feel stifled by anything ever.
All right.
So nudity.
Yeah, in film.
Most of us have been naked at some point.
At least once.
At least once. Most of us started out that way.
Most.
And most of us have seen most of us have been, pardon the pun, exposed to nudity in film at one point or another, whether it's the Terminator traveling through time or if Jack Dawson is drawing you like one of his French girls.
Right.
At some point, there has been some skin that has shown up on our television screens.
Right. Yep.
And there's varying opinions on it, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
If there's nudity in a film, there's pretty much always a disclaimer at the beginning of the film.
Sure.
Advising viewer discretion or parental,
Guidance.
parental
Yeah.
accompaniment. But so this week, nudity in film's not really a topic that we have a whole lot of information on.
No.
The two of us, that is.
No.
So we have brought in a gentleman who we're going to let, for the most part, introduce himself. We'll tell you his name is Stéphane Deschênes. He has a podcast of his own, which we will link down below. But he's maybe got a little bit more background and a little more experience in the in the realm of nudity in film.
Right.
And so yeah, we're going to get educated today.
Yeah.
Which is nice for two reasons. One, education is fun.
Right. The day we stop learning is the day we stop living.
Right. Is that like, are you quoting someone there, or is that a Pete?
Like, that's not a direct quote. I'm sure like PBS or someone official has used that, and I've just heard it before.
Starting next week in our merch store, you'll be able to buy T-shirts that say that on it. We're gonna trademark that. No,
sorry,
it'll be nice because that's fine. It'll be nice because learning is fun, and it will also be nice because he's probably going to do most of the talking in this episode, which will give you a little bit of a break from hearing our voices.
Yeah.
If you, for some reason, don't like our voices, but still listen to our podcast.
But still tune in every week.
Yeah, I would see a doctor about that. Not the open wide kind, but the tell me how that makes you feel kind. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Stéphane.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Man, it's nice to be here.
So let's just jump right into this.
Sure.
A quick Google search of your name kind of paints this image very quickly of Mr. Naked for most of Ontario, it would seem, and or at least there's a lot of even media coverage sort of tied into your name. How does that happen?
Just Ontario. I mean, I've been in the New York Times.
Wow. True.
Well,
dang.
How does that happen? Well, it happens when you're in your late teens and you enjoy skinny dipping a lot, as many people do, and you do it so much your friends start to tease you about being a nudist, and one day you say, maybe I am. And so you look into it and you get into it, and then you get involved, and because you have a personality that likes to get involved, you get really involved. And then I joined the Federation of Canadian Naturists, and I was on their board. Then I was president, and I joined the International Natures Federation for a while, and I was on their board. And then because nobody was doing it right, I bought my own park, and to do it the right way, at least the way I think is the right way. So that's kind of how you do that. I mean, for a while, I even taught a class for 3 years at the University of Toronto on public nudity.
Wow.
So it was, it's just, for me, enjoying it was only the start. The liberation you get from all that body shame and all that. Then I wanted to know why. And that's taken me on, I said late teens. Well, that was about 30 plus years ago. Oh. So for me, that's a lifetime now of studying, researching, and trying to understand human behavior when it comes to their bodies and our relationship to them.
Right. So it's fair to say then that you've seen many a film around and containing nudity.
Yeah, well, the media portrayal of nudity, whether it's in film, the basic thing is that somehow we've all agreed that we're supposed to be embarrassed and ashamed and even offended by our own image. And when you become a nudist or naturist, you start to realize how ridiculous that kind of is. And we can have a whole show about that and talk about that, so I won't get too far into that. But the movies and media, television, now that you can have nudity, has that. But the movies was always interesting because in the beginning there was a lot of nudity, and then they came up with censorship, and then they came up with ratings. I mean, we're talking back to early 20th century. People, that's the funny thing, is people want to see nudity. They pay to see nudity. It sells. And then, but we all seem to agree that we shouldn't see it, or it should be very restricted. So it gets very confused very quickly. let's take a look at ratings, for example. The MPA in the U.S., I don't know, Canadian have ratings too, but I don't know if this exists. But I know it exists in the U.S. In the U.S., they give you a warning for nudity. They'll specifically say nudity. But they will specifically say male nudity. Male nudity is a specific warning, which is worse. Like in the way they measure things, to get an R rating in the U.S., you have to have nudity. Male nudity gets you there way faster than female nudity. There's no female nudity. There's regular nudity and male nudity. And there's a whole fascinating sociological, psychological discussion you could have on that as to why that male nudity is more offensive than female nudity, but somehow it is. It probably goes back to all the classical nudes that we have, which are all women. But maybe it also goes back to, this whole male domination, patriarchy. Who knows? It gets complicated. And so the whole media around nudity is interesting. Even how actors and actresses negotiate it. Like, have you heard of the fact that sometimes a body double would be hired for a nude scene?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of that, Pete?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, so they'll have a no nudity thing in their contract. So they'll hire somebody to in the shower scene, when you see the nudity, it's not them.
Right.
It's from the back or the side, but you see a breast or whatever, but it's not really their breast. What fascinates me about that is everybody who's watching thinks it's their body.
Right.
But they feel better that it's not their body, even though everybody thinks it is.
There's two examples that I can think of with that. One is, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a movie that Mila Kunis was in, and at one point in the film you see a Polaroid, and the Polaroid is supposedly of her topless or with her shirt up, and so when that movie came out, it made it as headlines do, because it was supposedly her first naked scene in a film, which is always a big deal news-wise for an actor, and she quickly, the rumors were quickly snuffed out, and she said, no, that's my face, but that's not my body. Right, and so there was some kind of
I think that's Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That might be that movie.
Is it? Okay,
be.
could be.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting, and maybe Stéphane has a comment about this, but I've got another example first. But
sure.
I think it's interesting because, like, if it's not your body, but everybody thinks that it's your body,
right,
then like, is that any better? Like, what? But the other example I can think of is from one of my favorite TV shows of all time called Friends. Right. Which maybe some people have heard of. I think it had a little bit of a successful run at one point.
Yeah, in some places, yeah.
I think I might have seen
one of those. You may have seen it,
yeah.
So, yeah. But Joey, the actor, in one episode, he's hired to be Al Pacino's butt double. So there's a scene where there's like a shower scene in a movie, okay, and Joey is playing Al Pacino's ass.
Sure.
But basically, what ends up happening is he gets fired because he's acting too much.
Oh.
He's acting too much with his butt, and it's this whole kind of funny, like he's like clenching it, and he's doing all this kind of like, and they're like, nah, cut, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm showering, I figure at this point in the movie, maybe it's not Al Pacino, it might be Bruce Willis or something, but he's like, I figure at this point in the film, the character's really, he's emotionally distraught, and so his butt would be doing this as a result, and they're like, well, no, go home, get out of here. So eventually he doesn't end up being in the film. But yeah, so I guess that would be the question is in the Mila Kunis example, if it like, what do you see a merit to that? Like, what is the merit in having your face on there, but having some other, like, is that not thinking your own body is adequate enough to shoot the scene, or are you somehow, like, are they protecting themselves by making it very convincing that it's their body, but it turns out it's photoshopped and it's not actually their body? How does that?
I think it's probably a number of things. Somehow there's a power in having pictures of somebody nude.
Okay.
if somebody has pictures of you naked, they can somehow blackmail you, and if you become famous, then maybe you'll fight to not have it released or pay money, unless you don't care. The ones who don't care are actually the ones who retain the power. Right. Say, go for it. Here's some more pictures if you want. Mm-hmm. And then there's no power. But there is this perception that if I have a nude picture of you, I have power. So I guess there's plausible deniability. You can say, no, it wasn't me. It's somebody else's body, and therefore you don't actually own my imagery. You're not really looking at me. And in our society, that has some meaning, I guess. I think there's also the idea that to do a nude scene in a movie set, I'm sure everybody's completely dressed. There's probably a lot of people around. They have intimacy managers or coaches now. I was just reading about that to ensure that people are comfortable, for example. So there is it can be uncomfortable in a situation where you feel vulnerable because you're nude and everybody else is dressed. It's not a naturist nudist environment about equality. It's actually kind of the opposite going on.
I think I would find that pretty. If I were on a film set and there's 30 people, there's like gaffers and there's a director and there's a lighting guy and there's the guy serving the little finger sandwiches and there's whatever. Like this is a full set. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's day number 37 and it's my big nude scene day and everyone's there gathered around. I think I can picture that. I can picture feeling a little, like everyone.
There'd be some vulnerability because it's a unilateral situation. Like you're saying, it's not just everyone unclothed. Yeah. It's one specific, and then there's 72 other people watching, right?
Right.
And I'm sure the body shame that you mentioned as well is probably part of it as well.
Sure. So, but fundamentally what you're saying is the fact that I have all these nude photos of Pete, I don't actually have any power over him. That's
No, exactly.
Unless I can, like, how much Pete...
Well, it is if he lets you.
Right.
See, that's the thing. Where the power is, there was a thing just a few months ago where somebody... I think she was a model or something. Anyway, she accidentally showed her breast in a live feed, and then she deleted it. But somebody took a screenshot because people are really quick.
It takes like half a second.
And then the guy threatened her on Twitter, and she posted the picture and said, "Piss off."
Right, there goes all the power.
And so she kept the power by not caring. So it's in your head. But so it's like bullies. If somebody bullies you, it only works if you care that they're making fun of you about whatever it is.
This raises
Pete, so how much?
Well, no, this raises a question, Bree. Do you have like a camera set up in my room or something? Because this raises so many questions now.
I think the only question it raises is how much will you pay to keep a picture of your butt off the internet, Pete?
Oh man, let me go count my pennies and I'll get back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
So I was just going to tell you one more story. Is a few years ago, often people need nude people for a film shoot in Toronto, I've become a person they call. I'm like the unofficial nude casting agent guy.
Nice.
And so Kim Cattrall had a TV show that lasted a couple seasons, I think, called Sensitive Skin.
Okay.
And it was shot in Toronto. It was supposed to be Toronto, and she lived on Toronto Island. And she, as part of one of their things, she stumbles. They accidentally walked onto the nude beach, which in Toronto is Hanlan's Point. It really is there on the Toronto Island. And so they needed people to just be laying out on the beach, like a whole bunch of people regularly, which is hard to cast, right? If you want extras that are willing to be nude, and then you have to pay them extra money. And so they called and said, "Can you get a bunch of people?" We said, "Oh yeah, sure. We get a few bucks. We get to spend a day on the beach, have fun, be in a movie shoot. What the heck?" So we found a dozen people that were willing to do it, and so we go down there. It's a union shoot. So they tell us to lay out. We lay out. They shoot, and then they stop, and then there's like some kerfuffle or whatever because the union rep says we have to put on clothes. And so the producer says, "Well, they think the rules are in between shoots, you're supposed to put stuff on. It's for your protection." I said, "Yeah, but we don't want to. Like, it's a nice sunny day. We're not putting clothes on." And then one person says, "If I have to put clothes on, I'm leaving." And like so, there was a whole little hubbub about it, and then finally somehow the union person disappeared because we didn't need the protection, right? And they've made all these rules. So the rule is you have to put on a bathrobe in between the sets so that you don't feel pressure to keep it off or whatever, right?
Interesting.
So yeah, it's the whole nudity thing is a fascinating thing when it comes to human behavior.
Interesting.
Yeah, what do you got for us, Pete?
Well, I guess, Stéphane, how would you describe the current state of nudity in, I guess, Hollywood film or mainstream media in its use?
Well, I'm actually very sensitive to it because I see nudity differently. It's not something when the nudity is missing to me. It always seems really weird. So two people meet in a bar and they end up sleeping together, and you see them get up in the morning and they get out of bed and they're wearing their underwear. Like, who does that? Like, why would you keep all your clothes on while you're having sexual relations? Like, it's weird when it happens. And in a way, we have less. In a way, we have more nudity, and in a way, we have less. Like nudity on television now, Game of Thrones. It's like the naked violent show. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to find nudity. It's not nearly as taboo in lots of ways, but where the nudity in some ways was more natural almost when you go back to the films of the 70s. You would have never seen fully clothed people in a sexual situation in bed, because that's not how it would be.
Right.
And you might have, but it tended to be also a little exploitive, right? It was the woman getting out of bed fully nude to walk to put her clothes on. So there was a bit of an exploitive angle, and so perhaps that's why it's gone away. Because of the internet, because of the trading in nudity, because of the whole idea of what pornography is, I think it's become more controlled, and that's why you have anti-nudity clauses, whereas it was never an issue. The director said you got to be nude, you're nude, and nobody ever even argued it. So it kind of goes both ways. What we still don't have is very much non-sexual nudity. You would have a hard time finding nudity in any film or television that is not really in a sexual context or for the purpose of a voyeur kind of thing for the audience.
Right. I guess I can think of a couple of films where maybe two of the main characters go they're at a party and they sneak off and they go skinny dipping, and maybe you see her topless or you see their butts or something, but it's always even if they're not engaging in any sort of sexual act, it's always two people that are kind of like it's a deal that the two of them are naked together because they're not dating yet, but they want to be, or he likes her or she likes him. So there's still always kind of an angle to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's a few. You're saying like the majority of the time there's some type of undertone, whether it's like obvious sexual undertones or like kind of under the radar. That's kind of what you're thinking.
You're asking me?
Yeah. Well, I think if you look at anybody showering, they never shower like you and I shower. Like the right. Camera is kind of, there's steam and you're seeing them at all the right angles and stuff like that. There's none of this like I'm just bending over to pick up my shampoo bottle or I'm just like, washing my armpits.
Right.
It's not, it's just... It looks like a fantasy. It never looks like real life.
Right.
How often do you see somebody just sitting on the toilet? It happens, but it's rare, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I can think of like one or two small examples that contradict that, but I'd say that 99% of the examples of nudity in film, you're right.
Yeah, and it happens, but it's rare. Like locker room scenes, everything. Whenever these things happen, where nudity is supposed to be normal,
right?
Or it doesn't exist where it should, a doctor's office or
right.
things like that.
Right.
And it's a weird. So like, who goes skinny dipping with their clothes on?
Right.
Yeah. And you see that, and it just it always throws me out of the movie when I see it because I don't know. I'm more sensitive to it, I guess.
And it also seems like anytime you do see it, it's the prettiest airbrushed incredible bodies that you'd ever, like you don't often see an older person or a plus-sized person doing it. It's these super thin, they eat four carbs a day, and that's how they stay in the shape that they're in, which I'm still working on.
And they wake up in the morning with their makeup on.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Really.
Wait,
and their hair done.
People don't do that?
Well, maybe you do.
No.
I go through so many pillows because of my lipstick. Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I need to spring for the more expensive stuff. So that's the current state of nudity. Historically, like how has like because you've said censorship plays a role in nudity for sure. What's kind of the history of that? Like when did and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but like when did we first start? Like I've seen old silent films that have nudity in them. So the idea of nudity in film is not a new concept. And so what, like, are there different eras of censorship that we've gone through? How does that look?
Yeah, well, first we're so used to the availability of everything now. You have to sort of think back of how things used to be. So for all of mankind, we've obviously always been sexual creatures, or there wouldn't be many of us left. And so the idea of seeing sexuality, which is closely tied to nudity, has been common. Victorian times, they were, whatever technology was, whether if you were carving it in the stone, somebody's carved some phallus or some sort of sexual thing. Like you go to Pompeii, and there's drawings of male genitalia on the walls that people have found as graffiti. In the Victorian area, before pictures, well, I guess there were pictures, but you had, the stereoscope, and there was nudity, there was pornography, essentially that way. So pornography, nudity, same thing, right? In most cases. And just non-sexual nudity was not something that people were spending a lot of time and money to do. So imagine before the internet, imagine going back to the early 20th century, and there's no television per se. Even when television comes, you're certainly not seeing nudity. So, sorry about that. So if you are looking for the titillation, you went to a movie. If you wanted a visual, it was a movie, unless you bought a magazine. But moving pictures, you had to go to a movie theater. So the moment movie theaters came out, pornography came out, and there was people willing to pay to see flesh, because it was sexual and it was something you didn't see. Part of it is an availability thing, right? As long as everybody's hiding it, everybody wants to see it. And so people were trying to do that early on with movies, and then people who had the morality police, whoever that is, said, whoa, hang on a second, this isn't right. And so some attempts to control it came in. But there were still people doing it, so then it was being done in the dark, if you will. And then the way... we'll talk about naturism and nudism in a little bit, but most people have an idea what nudism is about. When that came in, and that was an early 20th century thing too, that was about normalizing nudity and a non-sexual aspect. They were trying to do movies. And they did movies which were censored because that was the whole idea. That's how you were not getting hardcore sex unless you had some really, really, dark back alley corner place. You may have gotten a film that was actual hardcore sexuality. Mostly sexuality was just nudity. So any kind of nudism type of film would be nudity. And then several of these cases went to court. And in the United States particularly, where a lot of the movies are made anyway, the courts eventually said, hey, this is actually free speech. There is a message here, and nudity is the message, and therefore it's okay.
Right. I watched a documentary on, this would be like in the 70s that we're talking about?
The first cases were in the late 40s and 50s.
Okay. So I watched a documentary on a movie called Deep Throat, I think.
Oh, yes.
Which was made, I think,
that was pornographic in a much more hardcore way, but yes.
But ended up in the court system and was this whole big...
free speech, yes,
sure,
absolutely.
Okay,
because and it's a valid argument, but part of it is that kind of argument washed in the 70s. But the idea that courts rule exactly the same way is not true. It's partially based on what society can tolerate, and they could tolerate nudity, but in the 50s they would have never tolerated actual sexuality, because that would have been hardcore and totally inappropriate at that time. But by the 70s, it was more comfortable, and that's why that ruling came through. So, but with the ruling that nudity and nudist movies came in, that opened the door to all kinds of legal what we now call softcore pornography, right? And so you get now a whole raft of movies coming out, and as long as they appear to be documentary-like, and they're ridiculous, they're funny to watch, because they have this narrator, like a nature film, here's the nudist in their natural environment throwing the balls between each other. They are bouncing because they are happy. You just get this ridiculous narration in order to try to get past a censor to say this is actually a thing. And most of those, Doris Wishman, I don't know if you guys know of her, she did a lot of exploitive, nudie cutie, as they were called, movies at the time. And a lot of them were nudist in genre until it became acceptable to do just nudity without the nudist aspect. She did a bunch of those, and that's where nudity really entered the mainstream movies. And they had high ratings, but they could be shown in mainstream movies.
Pete, is it just me, or are you like, I'm with that last comment, I'm picturing like a Steve Irwin style commentary.
Yes.
Yes. Like, oh crikey, look at the naked people in their natural habitat, and like, yeah.
So yeah, it's ironic that the nudists and naturists, in an attempt to show that you could have nudity in a very wholesome, family-oriented, non-sexual manner, and that was good for you and all that stuff that the argument's about, that the movement's about, they open the door for the exact opposite, the exploitation of the human body in a more intense form, and the sexualization of the human body, which is the exact opposite argument. And you have people pretending to be naturists and nudists in order to make those movies and pretending that's what they're about, except we all know it wasn't.
Right. Okay. What are your thoughts, Pete? What do you got there?
So I guess, I think you've maybe alluded to it, but you could elaborate a bit more. How do you think nudity should be used in film, if at all? But, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, if you ask me as a naturist, I think nudity should be a non-issue. It should be, when it's appropriate, you don't wear clothes. Like, why does anybody wear clothes for swimming? But that's not reflective of culture. But I would like to, personally, I would like to see real nudity in media. And that's what we were talking about earlier, where it's not just for the purpose of a voyeuristic or exhibitionist, right? Because what you get mostly with nudity, it's an exhibitionist aspect for the star that is doing it, the actor, and it's a voyeuristic for the audience, because the audience is clothed and they're looking at nudity, which they're not used to. And as a result, it's always filmed in a certain way. It's always positioned in a certain way. And there are exceptions, and I love those when there's exceptions happen. But it's Girls was my favorite. If you saw that, I don't know if did you see that TV series?
No.
Did you, Pete?
No.
Well, in that, people are nude and they're just, they're not perfect bodies, and they're just kind of flopping around and sitting down naked the way you might sit naked on the couch if you were by yourself. And it handled nudity in a very good way that way.
That's interesting. And I think that if it needs to be, I would say, in my opinion, like, nudity makes sense in film if it makes sense from a story standpoint.
Right.
I always say that about everything,
Yep.
right? Like, someone will ask me, well, what do you think about, like, even things that are non-arguably offensive, right? Or like someone says sexual assault. I don't think they should depict sexual assault in films. And I go, well, but if it's serving a storytelling purpose, right? And so then the opposite of that would be the headlines, or Jennifer Lawrence shows her breasts in the new, and then people flock out and they don't care what the plot of the film is. They're flocking out to see this because, wow, you get a glimpse at Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of this stuff. So I guess I can see, and I don't know if you share this sentiment, Pete, but yeah, my thought would be, I've always said I'm for absolutely anything in film if it's handled tactfully and makes sense for the story. If you're putting it in there just for this kind of wow, if you're trying to create some sort of over the top spectacle, right? And you're hoping that that's going to get my butt into the theater seat as a result, then that, if I pick up on that, that's very off-putting. Right. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree, because there's that age-old adage of sex sells, and that's one of the main, reasons of pushing the envelope, that if they say XYZ actors in this movie and topless, that can maybe lead to more ticket sales regardless of the plot. And I'm in complete agreement. I'm not opposed to nudity in film if it's not misplaced and if it has a purpose. I'm not a fan of kind of inaccurate or fantastical romantic gestures or sexuality just for the sake of it. I'm more if it's used in a way for storytelling or furthering the plot or just telling human experiences. Like in Titanic, like the famous nude scene in Titanic, to me, doesn't really need to be in there. And the example that I kept thinking of when we've been talking is Schindler's List. There's a lot of nudity in this movie, but completely just not sexual in any way, shape, or form, because it's conveying a human story and just human experiences. And unfortunately, in that specific case, as horrific as it was conveying a point, and it had a purpose, and it wasn't just kind of slapped in to add some people at the box office.
I mean, something I think that's interesting though, like with the Titanic, like I love Titanic,
and I do too. Yeah, for sure.
And we still need to. We're going to do an episode on Titanic, but I've gone on record several times saying Titanic isn't my favorite movie.
Sure.
But I would say if you take the story, the foreshadow, like how the story is written, and from a movie making standpoint, the technical achievements, the visual effects achievements of what they did, I think it makes the top 3. It's not my top 3 favorite films, but I think it's one of the top 3 best films ever made.
Ooh, wow.
And so, anyways, but I would say like. You talk about the Schindler's List nudity not being sexualized, but an interesting aspect from the Titanic standpoint is yes, there's the scene where you see Rose. I think you see like the top half of her butt and her breasts. Right? That's kind of. I don't think you see much else. But she's kind of she's sprawled out on the couch, and he draws her. But like 5 minutes later in the film, they have sex in the back of the car down in the cargo hold, and you don't see any nudity there. So I would argue, I would say I do think they were pretty tactful as far as like I do think Rose, like her gesture, in her mind, there's a sexual overtone in that scene for sure. That's I really like this guy. I'm going to take, I'm going to create this situation where I take my clothes off in front of him, and it's going to kind of, it's going to kind of set the tone. It's going to turn the notch up on what's going on here for sure. But yeah, no, that's an interesting observation.
Well, but there's you say you're okay with nudity when it furthers the plot or it fits in, but I would argue that nudity is avoided. Like there are scenes, restaurant scenes happen all the time. There's all kinds of scenes that happen all the time. Nudity, I think, is specifically avoided. Whether it could be in a movie, if it meant nothing, it would probably show up more often. But because it means something, because it's difficult to get the actors to agree to do it, because it affects your rating, whatever the reason is, there's a lot of reasons why nudity is not included in film. Sexuality is usually the reason that it is included. But, just sitting on the couch naked watching TV, people do that. having breakfast naked, watching, people do that. Having a normal shower, not a sensual shower, people do that every day. Those scenes don't show up or are shot in a way that you don't have to see the nudity, because that makes it easier for everybody, or it's awkward, or whatever the reason is.
Right.
True, but when it's included, it can be really interesting. Starship Trooper. Have you guys seen that one?
I have.
No.
So in Starship Trooper, there is a scene, because gender is kind of irrelevant at that point, I guess, and they're all soldiers together going to fight the bugs on the planet.
Yeah, it's a futuristic space.
Okay.
They all shower together. And they're just showering like a bunch of guys would shower in a room, in a common shower together. And I mean a bunch of guys, because women, even when I was young, had stalls, didn't do the group shower thing. In fact, very few guys do group shower thing anymore. But they are just showering, and they're just talking, and they're just talking about life, and there's nothing to. They're all nude, and there's nothing to it, because of course you're nude when you're showering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff, does it add to the plot? I don't know. It adds an interesting twist to it. It makes a statement in that case about the relationship between men and women and their role in society. But does it have to?
Right.
Is every time they have a conversation in a restaurant, does a restaurant mean something, or are they just in a restaurant?
Right. Yeah, I guess. Maybe I'm the outlier here, because all of my showers are sensual showers. Life. What's the saying? Life is a play, and the world is your stage, or something.
Where you film them all? Is that what you're saying?
No. I just but the mirror's there across from I can see myself. Anyways,
I'm a bit of an outlier too, because I only bathe once a year. And it's literally like a wash tub on my back porch. It's like not even a shower. So
yeah,
it takes forever to boil that water.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. That's a bugger. So you talk about rating and nudity affecting rating, which we've all seen. The following program may conclude, I guess this is more of a television warning. Yes. But the following program may contain scenes of violence, coarse language, nudity, and sexual content. Viewer discretion is advised. I think my question is, the question is twofold. Question number one, is there significance to, like, you've already pointed out the difference in ratings when it comes to nudity and male nudity. But nudity and sexual content are also always listed separately. Whereas, or a lot of the time, nudity and sexual content, like if you go to IMDb and you look at the parental rating for a film, it'll have nudity, the thing is nudity and sexual content. Or it'll describe a scene, and it will say the two characters engage in sex, but nothing is shown. You don't see anything.
Because you can have sexual content without nudity.
Right. And so it seems the more nudity you have in a film, the higher rating you get. Not like 10 stars out of 10. No, it's you go from G to PG-13, or to PG to PG-13 to R to the dreaded NC-17. Which, for those who don't know, if your film gets an NC-17, no movie theater is going to play it.
Right.
Basically, it can be released. And often you'll see films that get an NC-17 and they go back and they re-edit it. Or they'll reshoot some scenes in order to get down to an R rating, so that their movie can have a major theatrical release. Because if your movie doesn't make it into the theaters, you're not going to make your money back on your movie, right? So the question is kind of, is that system sensible, or is that system messed up, in the sense that, is nudity in film something that requires viewer discretion? Is it something that should we fast forward through the nudity scene in Titanic when we're watching it with our children, or should that not be a big deal?
Well, obviously, I don't think nudity in itself is a big deal. I mean, at Bear Oaks, there's lots and lots of children running around seeing naked people all the time, and they're naked themselves. So in a naturist environment, it's not an issue. But of course, the movies are for mainstream, and it is reflective of how society feels. So that society freaks out at nudity and can't see it generally as anything but sexual. So the fact that the two are never separate, it's upsetting to us because as a naturist parent, it's very difficult to separate the two. And I don't know how often you see nudity without the sexual warning.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's so cultural. So culturally, it's appropriate because that's what society currently feels and believes, and I'm okay with that. But so in Quebec, back in the days when we were renting things, renting movies, and my wife and I were laughing because we're looking at the back, and it would say something like, Ontario R or Quebec PG.
Oh, wow.
It was always like one rating lower in Quebec.
Wow, that's so interesting.
So their standards were different because it's cultural.
Which is that's maybe like stronger ties to the European culture, or
yeah, to a certain extent, a slightly more liberal, different attitude towards nudity and body image and sexuality as well, as to what's appropriate. I mean, should children? I'm not talking about porn, but if children see sexuality, is that a bad thing? Or is it something for you to have a discussion as a parent as to what it means?
Right.
Like, there's different arguments as to when you should start speaking to your children about sexuality and what it is.
Oh, that's a whole can of worms.
Exactly. Yeah. And some people think earlier is better, and some people think later is better. But in Canada, movie ratings are provincial. Whereas in the U.S. you have the MPAA, which does it for the entire country.
Okay.
And so there was a very clear difference between Ontario ratings and Quebec ratings.
That's interesting. Yeah. Now we have a bit of a tradition on this show, and Pete and I haven't really discussed this, whether Pete's prepared anything for this or not. Typically, Pete graces me.
Yeah. No.
And no, you don't have anything?
Sorry, no. Yeah, I wasn't sure how to...
Oh, my goodness.
That's... Yeah. Sorry, Stéphane. Usually we have trivia, and I didn't...
Normally we do trivia.
Trivia? Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for Stéphane?
I do have some, but I'm wondering if we'd leave them for the bonus episode.
We would talk about them in the bonus episode. Yeah. The one question that I would have then, just to give some context briefly, is several times you've mentioned, so we've talked about nudists, but you've used the term naturism several times.
Yes.
What is that? Is that an interchangeable term?
It depends who you ask. I prefer naturist because, as strange as it might sound, this is not about nudity. The nudity is a tool to help people accept who they are, show respect towards others by presenting their true authentic self and living a more natural life. But nudist is the most common term used, particularly in the U.S. and in some other countries around the world. Whereas in Europe, naturist is by far the most common term. So I think naturist makes more sense because it de-emphasizes the nudity, which obviously is very salient. The idea of running around naked is what shocks people. But it doesn't take long before you're used to it, so it's not a big deal. So I prefer naturist because it's about being our more natural self and living a more natural life, which doesn't mean you live in the woods and sleep on a bed of leaves. It just means that you're more in touch with your body and who you are and what it is in relation to others. But nudist, and I could give you a 1-hour lecture on where that term came from and why it caught up in the U.S., but I'll just make it brief by saying I believe it's mostly because of one book written by Dr. Maurice Parmelee, which was first published in 1927 and was very, very popular in North America about the philosophy behind the movement right through the 50s. And he used the term nudist.
Right, okay.
Whereas French people and France became a center for vacationing, used the term naturist, and that spread to Europe. So you have the two terms. Okay. they can mean the same or they can mean something different. If you say nudist in Europe, it's almost like a slight.
Right.
And if you say naturist in the U.S., it means more like beach people, hippie kind of people.
Okay. Okay. And well, like for anyone who's interested in more information about that, or more information about naturism in film and like naturist films in general, we're going to go into a little bit more detail in our bonus episode. But just briefly, is because I assume there are naturist films.
Yes, there are. Some genuine. There's a lot of films pretending to be naturist, as we said.
Oh, okay. So then that's, the question would be, like, is naturism adequately represented in film, or you know?
No, it's not really. I mean, when it's represented in mainstream films, it's generally for the purpose of comedy.
Sure.
Peter Sellers in Pink Panther, for example. Have you guys seen that one?
Yeah.
Or for sexual purposes, for exploitive purposes.
Right.
There's a few exceptions, but it's rare. It's rare, and because it's problematic. But yeah, film is a way to communicate, and they have been naturists or nudists that have been making films for a while. There's not a ton of them, but the first one goes way back to the 30s. It was called Unashamed.
Okay.
I think you might be able to find it online. It's all black and white and kind of funny to watch.
Okay.
And it was shot at a naturist park. But it was quickly picked up by distributors who knew they were going to make a lot of money selling it to movie theaters that appeal to
It's a peep show.
Men in trench coats.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay. Well, so Pete and I, we do a sort of a regular segment as kind of, the way we end our show here, is we talk about what each other watched this week. And then we make a film recommendation to the other person. And so I understand that you have a film recommendation for us. So what we'll do is we'll do that portion. We'll ask you, maybe you watch some movies this week. And in addition to Pete and I, this is going to be a heavy movie week. In addition to Pete and I recommending films to each other, we'll also get a recommendation from Stéphane. So what'd you watch this week, Pete?
So I watched your recommendation of, was it The Pill or Pill? I think it was the Pill. Yeah.
The Pill.
It was actually, I want to make this distinction. I don't know if I don't think I was in the space to fully appreciate or enjoy it. So I'm not going to say I enjoyed it, but I was able to appreciate that it was a decent movie, actually. Sure. I like, there was just certain like cut scenes, or even just like the way they'd progress something in a scene, where like I'd kind of like slowly be inching myself closer and closer in the screen, because like there's certain, by the nature of the movie being the morning after pill, certain events are going to happen, but then it would detour out of the way, and then I'm wondering why, but what's going to happen. So my point is, there were some certain cut scenes, and even the character development actually was really good. So there was like elements to this movie that I think it's a good movie. I just wasn't quite in the headspace for it, but it was overall good. And
yeah, being a low budget, character story driven movie, it doesn't, the if you were playing a drinking game watching this movie, where every time there's an explosion you take a shot, you would find yourself disappointingly sober at the end of this film. It's not that kind of movie. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, for a low budget film, like it holds its own,
and not for everyone. Like it makes light of certain situations, and he's certainly a questionable character. From this, and I think kind of comes around, but
and I think that's what it boils down to. Just the subject matter. Not everyone's going to be in the mood for that specific thing, but
What else you watch?
The only other thing I watched after we had that episode where we talked about the top 100 movies of the 2010s based off IGN.
Yeah.
Ever since we went through that list, I've been rewatching some of the ones that were on that list that I also appreciated.
I really hope you're going to say Paddington 2. I hope so bad that you're going to say Paddington 2. Because the fact that I'm still beside myself, that of the last decade, Paddington 2 made the top 100.
I feel like we need to. I think we just need to actually review the movie, and either one of two things happens. One, it's a great movie, and we review it, and we just share it with the world. Or two, we'll just have a good time ripping it up and saying, what was it doing on this list?
Right. Yeah.
So the only other movie I watched this week is my recommendation for you. It's a Ben Affleck movie, Gone Girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. It's been on my list.
Yeah.
And
so nothing really to say. Just watch the movie, enjoy the ride, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I watched 2 films this week. I watched your recommendation, which was Get Out.
Right. Oh, I love that one.
And it's I think I feel the same way about this movie that you felt about Joker.
Right.
I loved Joker. Mm-hmm. And you acknowledged that it was a great film.
Yep.
But you're like, I might not watch it again. Like I just felt really uncomfortable, and I might not watch it again. And I don't think I'm as in that headspace about Get Out as you were about Joker, but I definitely echo some of that feeling, right? That I think this movie is masterfully made, but it's like I can watch stuff where it's like the Ouija board, and then your pillow wraps around your head in your sleep and suffocates you, and you don't know what's happening, and and grandma comes out of the fridge, but grandma's been dead for 30 years, so it's and that stuff, it's creepy, but it's whatever. I think the subtitle or the real merit of Get Out is it shows you how scary other people, like actual people, can be, right? This isn't some sort of demonic supernatural situation. This is just awful people, and it's an extreme. But I wouldn't say there were any moments in this movie where I went, oh, okay, well, it was plausible up until this point. Like you end the movie going, oh gosh, like there's maybe this doesn't actually happen very often, but there's probably more people than we'd like to admit who maybe have this mentality, and would have watched the film and went, I don't see what the issue is, right? So like it's similar, and I know you haven't seen this movie yet, Pete. It's similar to the remake of It, the Stephen King's It. So Pennywise in that film is supposed to be the big scary thing, right?
Sure.
For me, oftentimes I found that fell kind of flat. I love the movie. I think the character development's great, but I was never really terrified by Pennywise. However, at their school, there's a bully who, when Pennywise isn't around, this bully's kind of the guy who's traumatizing the children. This guy is 10 times scarier just because he's such a vicious asshole. He's he's 10 times more scary than Pennywise actually is. And I was feeling that watching Get Out. I was feeling this like I'm scared because these are people. Like, this is just genuine. It's like Misery. It's part of what makes the movie Misery so wonderful, is that you watch it and you go, holy crap, that could happen. Like that's that's a legitimate scenario.
It's scarier because it's based in reality.
Yeah, for sure. So I enjoyed it. It's not a movie I'm gonna watch every Christmas. That would be weirdly inappropriate. The other film I watched, because I get on a kick. You know this about me, so I don't know if this is a positive thing about me or if it's a negative thing, but I get on these kicks where I must complete something. I must see something all the way through. I can't jump into the middle of something and go, oh yeah, well, I got bits and pieces, but I'm missing information. I need the whole story. Tell me all of it. Which is why it seems like, so I've never seen any James Bond films. And it seems like, based on a Facebook vote, I am going to be systematically working through all 27,000 James Bond films, even though you don't have to. Like, I understand that they're kind of standalone stories, and it's not a big deal if you. My mind just can't do it. So, having just reviewed the 1984 film Ghostbusters, my girlfriend and I the next evening watched Ghostbusters 2.
Cool.
And so that's my recommendation to you.
Okay.
I know that you didn't dislike Ghostbusters.
Oh, not at all. No.
But having been your first viewing, there was a lot sort of riding on your, your take on it, and you weren't wowed by it. You weren't blown away and in love with Ghostbusters the way I was hoping and kind of expecting you would be. And I don't think the sequel is going to change that. Okay. But I think you'll enjoy it. So my recommendation to you is to watch the second Ghostbusters.
Sure.
Stéphane.
Actually, I'm not trying to make this about me. There's actually, usually I only watch like one movie a week, but I actually forgot I watched a different movie as well.
Holy cow. Okay. Hit me with it.
So
I'm hoping it's some like big crate, like, I forgot I watched all 3 Godfather films and it took like 14 hours of my life. I forgot that.
No. But it was a movie I've been waiting literally months to see. I watched the Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson Lighthouse movie.
You watched Lighthouse. How is it?
Yeah. I would probably put it in the Joker category. I don't even want to overuse that statement. I watched it and it was maybe just a little too artsy fartsy for me. It was very heavy. I was not comfortable throughout the whole movie.
Not comfortable?
Yeah. I was always expecting something ominous or bad to happen.
Okay.
And there's just like it's just very heavy. Like there's a lot of ties to Greek mythology and maybe even like some ties to the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, like just with the sea and killing an animal and the bad omens that it brings. But
interesting.
I'll say this, and this is, I think, summarizes it. This is from the same writer and director of The Witch.
Okay.
I think if someone was like, here's $100,000, you have to rewatch one of these films, which is it? I would probably choose The Witch.
Ooh, okay.
Which like, how I don't like scary movies.
Yeah.
And they're like, that is saying something. And I'm not sure why I was so uncomfortable in this movie, but I was.
Okay, so then here's my only question. Watching The Lighthouse, what did this do? Did it increase or decrease or have zero effect on your intrigue to seeing Robert Pattinson portray Batman?
So I'm going to say it had zero influence just because I think I was and am still excited to see him.
Sure.
I was not in the camp of, boy, this one trick pony can't do anything else, and then watch The Lighthouse and realize, oh, he's actually a good actor.
Right.
And I know there are people like that. So to me, it had no influence, and I'm still excited to see him.
Would you recommend The Lighthouse to people?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, you have to be in a really specific mindset and in a place in your life, and that's why I'm not recommending it to you. Because
screw you, I'm going to watch it anyways.
I would be curious. I would like your opinion, but I'm not going to force you to watch it.
All right. Stéphane, have you watched any movie? You're a busy guy. Did you watch any movies this week?
I did. Well, so I was thinking about that as you guys were talking.
Okay.
I didn't watch an actual movie, but I'm going to argue that this was a 6-hour movie.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
I watched Chernobyl.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Which is a 6-part, 1-hour miniseries, if you will.
And seemingly graphically realistic. Like they don't hold back.
I couldn't stop. So I really almost watched 4 hours, and then it was so late that I went to bed.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 hours the next day, I couldn't stop. It was really engrossing for a number of reasons. I mean, I remember when that happened, but I didn't know the story.
Sure.
I didn't realize how close we came to an even worse disaster, and how many people died.
Yeah.
And how many people essentially died voluntarily to save others.
Wow.
It's a fascinating story on the real life, a real life event. And plus, I love the Russian, at that time, USSR aspect.
Okay.
I've said a few times, I miss that as the enemy in modern storytelling. Because the enemy right now is terrorists.
Right.
And frankly, they're not very sophisticated. The whole Cold War was a complex, intellectual, almost sort of, battle of the minds and of propaganda and that kind of stuff. And it makes for much, a John le Carré novel, if you've ever watched those, or one of my favorite movies, Red October, Hunt for Red October. It's not like, just shoot 'em up kind of thing. Sure. And I really enjoy that whole series for that reason.
So Hunt for Red October.
There's something to be said. There's something to be said for the time when the USSR was the zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah.
It's just it's an interesting. It's so interesting to go back and visit other periods.
Yes.
And put yourself in that mindset. Hunt for Red October. This is completely unrelated. But are you? So obviously, Hunt for Red October is a film that revolves around one of the many different incarnations of Jack Ryan.
Right.
Did you read the Tom Clancy novels? Have you?
I haven't read that one. I've read I think one or two a long time ago.
Yeah, Some of All Fears, Patriot Games, stuff like that.
When I had time in my life to read a lot of books, which is not, it seems, recently. But and Jean le Carré novels, I always enjoyed those as well. Because they were complex. Like you had no idea where they were going, right? Sure. And that's the thing about those stories. Cool. Whereas the current genre of, don't get me wrong, there's some really great movies done about the battles in Afghanistan and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like The Hurt Locker, for example.
Okay,
But it's more about the human experience. It's not a complex story.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what I sometimes miss in some of the modern themes, if you will. That's of who the enemy is now. But the recommendation, of course, for you guys is going to be a nudist movie, and I went way back. I'm recommending a movie called Garden of Eden from 1954.
Okay.
And it was probably the most professional movie produced at that time.
Okay.
In terms of there were actual actors and everything else. They were really trying to make a mainstream movie. But you have to watch it with 1954 in mind.
In mind, okay.
With all the stuff we talked about in terms of, the role of people and in society and how proper and what was expected of people, and censorship. And we talked about, right, what was acceptable today and what was acceptable then, and how they did this as a result. It informs everything you're going to be watching.
Sure.
And, are they successful in getting that message across or not?
Right.
And that's the question. So I'm going to have to give you a copy because I'm sure you won't find it on Netflix.
Okay.
But I happen to have copies of a lot of the old movies that I can share with you.
Perfect. Okay, so we will do that. We'll watch that. And actually this Wednesday we will release our review for that. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. Thanks a bunch, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
That's that's so nice of you. Yeah, and thanks for Stéphane for coming.
Thank you very much, Stéphane.
Thank you again to our sponsor for this episode. Episode. Yeah, this episode, Tim DeArmond, media sales consultant.
Tim DeArmond, sales media consultant.
I don't think that was the right spot for that, but
okay.
But practice makes perfect, so that's good. If you're interested in learning some media sales tips and stuff like that, check out his LinkedIn page down below. He doesn't want anything from you. He doesn't want to sell you anything. He just posts some stuff that he thinks you'll find interesting, and so you should go check it out. It's not often someone is like, hey, here's something I would like to give you. I don't want anything in return.
Right.
So take advantage of this.
Yeah. The last time that happened to me, I was on a Greyhound bus and someone gave me a brown paper bag and they said, here, take this. But that was slightly different and it got me anyway.
Yeah. Pete, do you have a shout out for someone?
Oh, for the second week in a row, no, I don't.
Wow.
I have none in mind.
That's okay. I do.
Okay.
I would like to give a shout out to Emily Eddington, who I think we've given shout outs to before.
Right.
She's the wonderful, lovely wife of Carl Eastman, who's been on the show several times. And she
doesn't listen to the show.
Famously does not listen to our show.
Which is fine. Which is totally cool.
Even though it's totally cool. And the fact that, if I were married to Carl and Carl was on the show, I probably wouldn't listen to it either. So that's, take that for a grain of salt. Anyways, thank you so much for coming and listening to this. Until next time. So long.